really illustrate the power of design thinking, we're going to go to Denmark, and there's a very popular case of the good kitchen. Right now, the government of Denmark had a very unique problem on their hands, right? They had this fast-growing, aging population, and with that population came a few problems, right? So specifically, the Denmark government sponsors meals for about 125,000 senior citizens. So every day they prepare meals and send it to their houses, right? Yet, they realized that 60% of these senior citizens are low on nutrition and 20% are actually clinically malnourished. Now, this was a baffling situation for the Danish government. They were like, but we're doing everything that we can to make sure that these people are eating well. And yet, this was a situation. So, they got in a consultancy firm called Hatch and Bloom, and they told them that, see, this is a situation, you got to help us fix the menu, right? They thought that the problem lied in fixing the menu because, you know, maybe senior citizens don't like the food we're giving them, they have different tastes, or, you know, they want something else. So Hatch and Bloom took this problem and actually dived a lot deeper into it, right? What they did was that they shadowed delivery boys into the houses of these senior citizens. They watched the senior citizens as they received the food, unpacked it, prepared it, ate it. And on the other hand, they also went into the kitchens where this food was being prepared. They spoke to the employees, the cooks who were preparing that food, and, you know, they synthesized this entire situation, and they realized a few key things, right? So they realized that the senior citizens were actually embarrassed to be receiving help from the government. In Denmark, people would approach their friends or they would approach their family if they needed help. Approaching the government for help was an absolute last resort, right? So although the government had good intentions, they failed to realize that, you know, there is an underlying emotional current that's stopping these people, or it's making them really embarrassed about their situation, right? The second important discovery was that after personal hygiene, the second most important thing for these people was the food that they ate. They were particular about what they ate. Some of them even grew their own vegetables, and, you know, they wanted to use that. They liked seasonal fruits and vegetables, but they didn't have any control on the menu. They didn't have any control on their choices of food, right? So that was painful for them. And the third was their situation of eating alone, being disconnected, not getting that seasonal food taste. So what they realized is that the lesser they enjoyed the situation, the smaller their appetites. And that's why they were not eating well enough, right? On the other hand, the employees who were making this food, they were very demotivated because making meals in a government kitchen in Denmark is touted as a very low status job, right? So these workers were demotivated. They were bored of creating the same meals day in and day out. And in general, both these sides were very disconnected and demotivated in general, right? So what did Hatch and Bloom do? They started with actually shifting mental models, right? They wanted to give a fresh perspective to this entire situation. And they said that, okay, they got everybody together, right? They got all the key stakeholders, the municipality, the senior citizens, the cooks, and they got everybody to sit down together and said that, you know what, let's think about this as a restaurant. What if this food service was a restaurant and not a government-sponsored service? And this actually triggered a very creative rush. People started thinking of it differently. They started approaching it differently. So a kitchen became a restaurant, right? And that's when the cooks started thinking of themselves as chefs. And they started taking more pride in being chefs. There is a better status attached to chefs rather than cooks. And this also made them think about, okay, if we are the chefs and we're creating all this food, then who are the waiters, you know? And the vehicles were obviously the waiters. And this also made people think deep about the condition of these vehicles, the cooling systems. You know, they went ahead and changed a lot of that and, you know, spruced it up. And lastly, they started describing their menu a lot better. So instead of boring names with, you know, potatoes and sauce, which would not entice anybody to eat this food, they started thinking of it as a menu in a restaurant. When you go to a restaurant and read a menu, you feel like ordering the food because it's described so well, it's presented so well with pictures and, you know, photography. So this is the result of this entire exercise, right? It came out to be a completely new service with different packaging, different, you know, fresher ingredients. And the most important thing was that there was a two-way feedback mechanism. So through postcards, right, the senior citizens would convey what they felt about the food, and the chefs, the cooks in these kitchens would receive this feedback, and they would, like, you know, speak to each other. So what landed up happening is that a senior citizen on any given day knew who is preparing their meal in this kitchen, and the people who are preparing these meals were also more satisfied because, you know, someone's appreciating their food. They know the kind of impact their food is having on these senior citizens, you know, making their day a little better. So this connection kind of quelled their feelings of isolation and loneliness and demotivation in general. And this came to be known as the good kitchen, right? In numbers, right, this saw a 500% increase in meal orders only in the first week. And that's where, you know, there came about better nutrition, and, you know, they solved the problem of senior citizens not eating well enough and not being nourished well enough, right? And this is an emotional side of it where, you know, the chef says that if you have professional pride, you'll also cook good food, and good food actually comes from the heart. So the Danish government thought that the initial solution was fixing the menu, but what actually turned out to be the solution was something totally different, right? There were happier senior citizens with better nutrition, motivated employees who took pride in their work. Now, this is the power of design thinking.